We do really need to talk about some of the extreme and hostile commentary that you would have witnessed in recent days. Tragically, the worst of it came from politicians, with one politician in particular riling up angry crowds with extremely dangerous language.
This is a war! A war that was declared on our people over 200 years ago! They are still killing us! We have an opportunity to have a treaty that allows for, which is only through a piece of legislation, they could put 10 independent black seats in the Senate today, and we won't settle for anything less.
The radical left literally thinks we are at war. What happens when you tell an angry crowd they are at war? A racial war? What is the flow on to such foolish language? Politicians learned nothing from the global condemnation of figures like Donald Trump, who were rightly scolded for riling up crowds. I was incredibly disappointed to read the ABC's coverage of this speech, with Thorpe's words buried in the 11th paragraph in this article. And the author introduced Thorpe's ideas with such gentle subtlety, you would almost think her words were acceptable, mainstream even. Leading into the declaration of war quotes, the ABC wrote this. Federal Greens Senator Lidia Thorpe also criticised The Voice, saying everyone should be brought together through a sovereign treaty instead. How inclusive. Who needs a PR team when you have the taxpayer to fund your image restoration? Well, Joe, I know you've got a lot of thoughts on this, and I think it's really interesting to see how this will play out politically. Take the media aside and how the ABC, I do think, buried it, didn't condemn it, as they would with any other politician. How do you think this plays with what Anthony Albanese is trying to do?
Look, it doesn't help. He's playing it the right way by saying, look, the very fact that people like Lidia Thorpe are saying that this doesn't go far enough shows that it's not a radical proposal, and it isn't. It's a very modest proposal, and that is one of the many reasons I support it. But I still don't think that Lidia Thorpe's actions are good for The Voice. I think this is exactly what the radical left always does, which is they blow up anything that doesn't meet every single one of their deranged ideological demands. This is what the Bolsheviks did in the Russian Revolution. Let's not forget, they didn't overthrow the Tsar. The Tsar had already gone. He'd already stepped down. They overthrew a democratic government. That's what the Bolsheviks did in 1917. This is what Phil Cleary and the direct electionist Republicans did with the Republican debate in 1999. They said, well, it doesn't meet our model, and so we are going to vote it down. Even though they were a minority of Republican supporters, they were able to team up with a monarchist and blow it up. And again, just think about this pattern as it comes rushing through. The hard left doing the bidding of the right. What happened with the first emission trading scheme that Kevin Rudd put up? What happened? The Greens voted it down with the coalition. They voted together to kill it. Why? Because it didn't meet the Greens' exact extreme demands or expectations. And what is Lidia Thorpe doing with The Voice? She's doing the exact same thing. They do it every single time. The radical left are dangerous. They are fools. They should be banned from taking part in any public debate. But unfortunately, as a free speech enthusiast, I can't quite countenance that. But they are extremely dangerous and extremely damaging to any cause they encounter. They are fools.
Daisy, you would agree that they should be able to speak and then have their rallies, even if the ideas are extreme. Where I take exception is when you're saying it's a war, because wars are violent. That is the connotation of a war. Do you think that the media quoting it so gently in the articles was fair?
No, I don't think it was fair, and I absolutely agree with you. Yes, of course, I think everyone, even with the most whacked-out ideas in the world, should be able to express them publicly and without fear of retribution. But when it comes to, language that could be said to be almost inciting violence, or at least a dog whistle to rile people up, the media has a responsibility to report that and condemn it, because we've seen, for instance, in America, in the framework of Black Lives Matter, where that kind of rhetoric from politicians and from activists led them. We all remember the Summer of Love in 2020 after the death of George Floyd, which, yes, was dreadful. But the fans of that fire were absolutely inflamed by politicians like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Maxine Waters and those far-left Democrats who were paying for the bail funds of rioters. You had a media saying, oh, they were fiery but mostly peaceful protests, and it was just 3 months of destruction. And that racial agitation is still very much there in the USA. What Lidia Thorpe is doing is really not far off from that. And it's very, very lucky that Australians are generally such laid-back people, because all it would take would be the wrong kind of person to hear that kind of language, and boom, we might end up with our own Summer of Love. And I sincerely hope and pray that does not happen.